Hey, everybody, and welcome. All right, so in this video, we're going to be looking at the energy of this full moon. So today is November 27th, 2023, and it is a day of a full moon energy. So full moon energy, let's just talk about that for a second. Full moon energy really brings us an opportunity to illuminate, to see, to realign what needs to be seen so that we can get back to center, so that we can reveal what needs to be revealed, so that we can heal what needs to be healed. That's one of my favorite lines from my Reverend Darlene Strickland at Unity of the Blue Ridge. And so this full moon is highlighting gate 20. And I think it's a really beautiful gate. It's a really beautiful time for this gate in our lives because as we look at the different levels of it, it's really a contemplative gate. And if you've followed me, you heard me talk about these things, the basis of Richard Rudd's work, which is the Gene Keys, is really about contemplation, which is very similar to the concept of mindfulness. It's becoming aware of myself and my responsibility to my environment, to who I'm with, to what I'm doing. And that's the root of this gate. So in the I Ching, this gate is called contemplation, or it can be translated as contemplation. It's also known as the gate of seeing. We'll talk about that in a minute. In traditional human design, it's the gate of metamorphosis. And I think that's a beautiful, way we'll see how that kind of shows the growth that mindfulness brings us from as we become aware, as we become self-assured. And then in the Gene Keys, it's the way of self-assurance. And then in quantum human design, it's the gate of patience. So let's break that down and see how that all fits together. So one of the things that I want to start with, we'll start with the Gene Key because he has such a beautiful way. Richard Rudd has such a beautiful way of working with this gate. And it's really the root of the programming of Gene Keys. It's not something to just know about yourself. It's something to contemplate, and it's meant to be in action in our lives. And so at the shadow side of this, we would call it he calls it superficiality. And what he means by that is really absence. It's the absence of presence. It's what's superficial in our lives, which doesn't really have any depth or grit to it, right? So when we're running around and when we're not really connected to that inner well, that inner self, that place that is aligned in purpose and deeper meaning, then we're just kind of running around and doing the motions of life. And this can look like overdoing. It's all the daily tasks, and it's doing daily tasks without presence. So at this shadow side, it's this superficiality, which is really this absence. And that's really the root of mindfulness as well. Is mindfulness says, do the things you need to do, but do them with presence, do them with intention, do them with awareness, right? Like, don't just put the dishes away. Be present with the dishes. It's not about finding a certain emotional state. It's just about observation. And this gate and contemplation is really about our ability to become aware, to observe our lives and to be really present and to choose in each moment, in each breath, what am I putting my energy towards? And how am I bringing myself to this task? So that's kind of where we look at it from the shadow side of the Gene Key. And when we move into the gift of this gate is really about first, it's really about simply becoming the observer. And really, we know from all of the different modalities, observation is the first key in pretty much any transformation of who we are. We have to first become observant. It's that taking a step back and noticing about ourselves, noticing about our environment, because we can be so in our minds that we forget to notice the bigger picture. What's going on in my body? What's going on with my breath? What's going on? How am I showing up in my life right now? And so the first step is to just get to find that separation between You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the observer of those things. You are an infinite being of love and light, this light that comes from your soul. You have a higher purpose. You have a higher will. And then you have your humanity. And we're meant to have both of those things. We're meant to be divinely guided and to be presence in action. We get to be human. Don't forget that we want this body. It allows us to feel and to experience and all of these things. We want the both and, but we have to understand that we are a both and, that there is the presence that can then observe my thoughts. If you can observe your thoughts, there's a presence behind them that does that, right? So the first step of this is like that awareness that, oh, wait, what's happening right now in my life? How is this thing happening? And then using the energy of this full moon to get to look back at your life a little bit, look back at what are the patterns of my life? How have I not been present to my own life? How has that affected my career, my relationships, my family? Like not being afraid to get in the observer mode, to find that safety of alignment with that higher self, and then be willing to look. A lot of us are not willing to look, and we've been working with gates that have been encouraging us to look over the last several weeks. And so it's like being willing to look back and say, ooh, like this is my pattern. This is my behavior. This is my addiction. This is my toxic emotion that I'm not responsible for. And when we do that, when we make that space and we begin to allow ourselves to look back in real truth, being willing to see ourselves first in real truth and without like coding it over and making it about us being a victim in some way, but like how were we present or not present with the past, with the things that have happened in our past? That alone is huge, right? Like when we take that self-responsibility, that's the next step of that. It's like, okay, that's my pattern. That's my thing to reveal and to heal so that I can be more present with the people I am involved in with now. So it's like, then it brings it back into this present moment. And it says, and if I release these things, if I heal these things, how can that change my presence in the present? And also, how can I bring more presence to my daily life, to my relationships, to my to-do list? And we do that by pausing, like with that breath. When I used to do brain integration, I used to tell people that brain integration wasn't about fixing the brain. It was about giving people the space between reactivity and responsiveness. And that's what contemplation or mindfulness does. Becoming the observer, becoming bigger than our own problem, gets to give us the perspective of, oh, this is how my humanity, the human in me is reacting, but my soul is responsive. It's a totally different energy. You can feel that when you're in that aligned space, you're not trying to make something happen. You're not pushing against timing. And when we look at this from the quantum human design perspective, it's about patience. It's about trusting so deeply in that self-assurance, in that space in between things, that we're not rushing because of fear of missing out or fear of not enough or the fear of not being supported in some kind of way, which can lead us to make hasty decisions, absent superficial decisions that didn't bring presence to them. And even if we're responding, if you're following human design and you're maybe a generator or a manifesting generator and you're meant to respond, it's still responding from presence and not from the mind. Remember, it comes from the body, right? It comes from this inner knowing. And that's really the gift of this gate, is about this inner awareness, this inner alignment, the self-awareness that leads to self-assurance. When we really know ourselves, we know the truth about ourselves, and we're willing to look even where it's dirty, even in the far corners of the shadows of ourselves, when we're willing to look and we know who we are and how we react, or if that's a part of us that's responding to somebody. If we take a breath, sometimes it's hard to take a breath, y'all, like parts that are reactive like to really get in there and take over, right? It takes a lot of personal responsibility and self-awareness to understand that you have a part that's driving the bus, and to stop the conversation until you can be with that part enough yourself that you're healing the part because you are giving it what it needs. It wants something externally and it's never going to find it out there. So this gate reminds us is that I can't have my life fixed on the outside. I must go inner. It's that seeing in the I Ching. It's the inner viewing of myself, my behaviors, my parts, and then bringing the love of my life force to that part and saying, I see you. I know that you need something and I'm here. I love you. I love you unconditionally and with gentleness and kindness, and then come back into the conversation or into partnership or into your whatever was happening, right? So usually it's people. Usually that's where we mostly get triggered. So self-assurance is knowing that you have everything, you are complete. You have everything you need. And when you have that, there's this presence that comes from that, that is calm, right? We know people that are really centered in this gate because they have a innate calmness. They don't feel like they are rushing through life. They don't, that you can almost feel their energy like breath. It just is. And that's the citic state of this gate, is like you move beyond having to become aware or be self-assured. You just are this presence that affects your entire field, right? Like there's no more trying, right? Like we just looked at that gate. There's no more trying. Like Yoda said, there is no try, only do, right? So it's like do or do not. That's what he says. But it's like that's where this comes from. It comes from this inner self-assurance that I'm a complete system. I have everything I need. I'm guided. I am taken care of. And that I have the space between how my mind wants to react and how my soul wants to respond. And when I make that space and I become mindful and present in my life, then I attract more opportunity. I attract right relationship, and your life begins to flow with ease. Again, we looked at this gate last week. We've been moving through the gate that helps us to flow with ease. And this particular full moon is highlighting, we're coming off of having worked with that, and now we're looking at like, where can I trust in my presence enough to know that I don't have to scurry through, that I don't have to make to-do lists and do them mindlessly, especially going into what we call the holiday season around here, which can become very mindless. We forget that this is really a season about coming together with our inner knowing and our outer relationships. It's meant to be in presence with each other. It's technically, it's a holy time. And even if you're not religious, spiritually, the winter solstice is this holy time, this reverence for becoming still, becoming present with something, and not the holiday hustle or bustle that we like to talk about, this rushing around, right? This is the reminder to come back into your stillness, into your presence, and bringing that full awareness into everything that you're doing, instead of becoming a shell that is absent and superficial, right? So the reminder here is to use this full moon to say, can I feel my compass? Can I find that deep sense of inner morality that is my compass, the truth of who I am, and allow that inner compass to become the feeling and the intention of being self-assured. Self-assured is not about being assured with my ego. It's about being assured with my higher power. I am aligned. It's that spinal energy of knowing who I really am, and the energy I have to bring towards something is sacred, and I need to treat it that way. I need to treat everything I do with an amount of reverence and awe. So I hope that helps you with this. Moon might be a bit intense for some people, especially because it's going to highlight our tendency to be reactive, our tendency to be the victim, how we want to see ourselves in the story, our addictive patterns. And so those things might be up for us. Like, how am I adding to the toxicity of my environment because I am a co-creator with my environment. And how do I need to clean up my act? By getting present with what's really happening. So good luck out there, and I'll be getting you a new gate video really soon.